Replaying Spider-Man the movie has not been the most riveting experience in comparison to its previous counterparts. The original console experiences introduce a solid foundation of Spider-Man combat with an original story that intricately weaves both villains and heroes together to stop a treacherous fog from engulfing New York. While Spider-Man the movie rigidly follows the story of its theatrical counterpart and takes no risks that the previous Spider-Man titles introduced, I still feel this is a title worth talking about. It was based on one of Marvel's biggest and most popular arachnids, and a cultural phenomenon in the early 2000s. Y2K Spider-Man. This is one of the new titles to be released out of the new Millenia, and it's nice to see that this game also hits multi-platform, so you do have choices, but with choices, you gotta decide which version works for you. And that's where the Port vs. Port series comes in, which is a series highlighting the differences and the similarities of the vanilla and port versions of a singular title. Put on your Spider-Man cartridges. Oh yeah, that's right, he has like web coming out of his goddamn... And let's talk about Spider-Man for the PS2, the Xbox, the Gamecube, and the PC. You know the old saying, movie-based games are a waste of time, not worth playing due to lack of care, blah 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 blah. But Spider-Man the movie is not any of these aspects, but it does have quite a lot to live up to. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man grossed a whopping $821.7 million, which did not include toys and merchandising. The success of Spider-Man 2000 and its sequel Electro pushed Activision to accommodate the engine to the next-gen platforms. If you have any remote familiarity with how the previous Spider-Man titles control or how combat works, then you'll feel right at home with this one. You have the same basic punch and kicking moves in addition to classic web dome and web ball in all directions. Activision refined the combat by introducing a combo system that lets you collect moves throughout each level, allowing Spider-Man to flip and kick all over enemies. Consistency through all the ports, from the menu selection to activating cheats, or even the FMV cutscenes, contain minuscule differences, so I'm not going to be covering these in full detail to those aspects. Multi-platform titles of this generation have the PS2 suffering the worst from graphical issues and performance, and that holds true here for Spider-Man the movie. Because the PS2 version lacks the quality and fidelity of the other ports, it is considered the weakest of the four. Spider-Man's frame rate is capped at 60, but never has the power to reach that level except for minor occurrences like the battle with Scorpion. 30 FPS is about the best that the PS2 can muster, but has trouble keeping at that level. Enemies can sometimes flood the screen with explosions and NPCs. It is simple to tell how much the PS2 struggles to keep this version at a presentable pace. What is unfortunate is that some in-game cutscenes that are animated at 60 FPS tends to introduce 30 FPS gameplay, having a jarring and confusing dissonance that left me baffled as to why the PS2 struggles so much. Graphical quality also suffers from desaturated colors that are stark in comparison to most versions like the Xbox, and the detail on the character models, while already being poor, is pretty horrendous.
Talk! No talking! You can't take me back!
I wouldn't even know where to take you back to.
I will say that the controller layout is subjectively the best out of all the ports here. The PS2 has an awesome controller balance to handle a variety of games and genres that have lasted for 3 console generations and feels the most comfortable with this controller. What is even more surprising is that Spider-Man incorporated a modern control layout using the second analog stick for the camera. While easy to scoff at today's modern gaming, the 7th generation of gaming struggled to figure out a universal camera layout that could be applied to most games. PS2 games like Kingdom Hearts, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, and Dragon Quest all use the L and R buttons to shift the camera, something that has not been really fully adapted until the next generation. While I will not consider this version any step up from the Gamecube or the Xbox at all, it is playable and does arguably have the best controller of the 3. From here on out, the ports get better, and so does the quality. The Gamecube is the little lunchbox with horsepower packed in a mini disc, but it has always delivered with its mix of attractive titles and raw graphical power. The Gamecube can bring out more potential from Spider-Man at 480i resolution. It's no different than the PS2 version, but it does feel as though this version has more clarity in its environments and its character models. Spider-Man the movie runs at 60 FPS with barely any dips during gameplay. Heavier sections of the game like Chemistry Chaos, which has a couple of robots throwing grenades and projectiles, do little to dip during these moments. It feels as though Activision prioritized optimizing the experience on the Gamecube and Xbox versions. Unlike the PS2, both the cutscenes and the gameplay have equal matching frame rates, making it easier to not take me out of the game. The last strong suit of the Gamecube version is the controller. While the love of this controller is subjective to some, having extremely responsive triggers and perfect button travel make this the controller of choice for most. All of the attack buttons are on the outer face of the controller while using the A button for jump. The Gamecube C-Stick was never a strong suit since it's primarily used here for camera controls, but it does get the job done and allow for a responsive experience. I will admit that the Gamecube has more of the same that we've seen on the PS2, but higher quality. Better frame rates and eye-pleasing models, richer environments, vivid colors, and great load times. You can't go wrong playing the Gamecube version, but there is an even better version to consider.
Oh, yeah. Thanks again.
No problem. Grab hold of a road balloon anytime. Rescuing damsels is my specialty.
The Xbox during this generation was a true powerhouse over the two consoles. Using a Pentium 3 processor and 64 megabytes of RAM, the Xbox provided smoother frame rates and visual clarity that PCs at the time had trouble replicating. The same is said for Spider-Man, running at 60 FPS with no hitches whatsoever. Swinging along with the city or fighting the Green Goblin induces little to no stuttering. Colors are more vibrant compared to the desaturated colors on the PS2, and vastly superior models and environments. You can observe much more detail on Spider-Man's costume webbing and how it pops from his model, or the little ribs on the Green Goblin's flight suit. The Xbox version introduces 2 brand new levels that are exclusive to this version. Treyarch added one more villain to this rat's nest, Kraven the Hunter.
Welcome, Spider-Man. I am Kraven, the world's greatest hunter. Now that you are within my trap, we can begin our glorious contest of strength.
Kraven's mission was to capture Spider-Man and bring him to Oscorp, both for a ransom and thrill-seeking hunt. Both levels involve Kraven, with the first having you traverse a jungle-styled maze full of flaming tiki masks, spiked revolving bamboo traps, and the gimmicky poison element. Yeah, the gimmick of these two elements is to fight Kraven poisoned and handicapped. I was never really a fan of these kind of gimmicks that handicap the player for no apparent reason other than artificial difficulty, but it's nothing short of a nuisance. The second level has you fighting Kraven himself, also handicapped and poisoned. You are trapped in a cage with only him shooting and wrestling at you. In the grand scheme of Spider-Man's pacing, the levels are pretty obtuse and irrelevant as they are nothing more than handicaps and gimmicks to fluff out the game. But it is exclusive to the Xbox, so that might be a positive feature for some regardless. Finally, we have the Xbox controller, also known as the fattest controller in existence. I was never a fan of this controller with single triggers making web zipping tied to the black and white buttons, furthering button travel. This is a huge negative, as the PS2 allows web zipping with a short R1 button press or the GameCube's Z button. Either way, the Xbox controller layout feels out of place and poor in comparison. The benefit of new levels, a better graphical presentation, and visual clarity make this the prime version for most people to play, including myself. Unfortunately, we have one more version to play, and this was the absolute worst of them all. The PC version has a mind of its own. It starts up when it likes to, crashes at dire moments, or stays stuck at loading screens. I never wasted more time in my life getting a game to run on Windows 10 than Spider-Man the movie. Natively, this port is impossible to run without the help of mods and patches. Updating to the latest patch allows the executable to be rewritten by a hex editor for whatever resolution you like. 1080p, 4K, and ultrawide are all available for use with some TLC. Blowing up the screen does have some unfortunate visual caveats. FMV cutscenes are uncentered and improperly scaled, positioning them to the leftmost side of the screen. Desaturated colors and poor frame rate playback lower the quality of the overall visual experience. The FMV cutscenes are dated and poorly made, so I do not feel as much value has been lost for this port. You'll feel right at home on the PC if you enjoyed the menu experience on the console. Menus are snappy and easy to maneuver despite the widescreen resolution. This allows you to navigate through the cheap menu or go back to viewing the secret store. The gameplay is where this port does shine, providing a full 60 FPS with no dips at all. This is nowhere near surprising since the limits of this port are subjective to your hardware, but otherwise provide a great visual experience here. The biggest elephant of the room is the HUD, which scales with your resolution. Since the game was not crafted for high definition resolutions, the HUD stretches with the screen, creating a distorted image of its original counterparts. Your field of vision will scale with the inputted resolution, but the HUD will stretch along with it. When Spider-Man runs reliably, it provides a solid gameplay experience capturing everything that made the console version superior, aside from the exclusive levels on the Xbox. Can you believe that this port also contains native controller support? Connecting a wireless controller to your PC natively uses each button and can be remapped in the key bindings. You can map the controls to be exactly like the console experience, tuning it to your liking. But this is where the positives end.
So you must be Quilt Man, Padded Pete, Mr. Triple Ply? Oh, I've got it. The cushion.
Spider-Man has difficulty detecting the camera analog stick, unable to swing the camera. Camera movements are essential to 3D platformers and beat-em-ups, and it is disappointing to see that there is nothing to activate this. Spider-Man makes it impossible to move the camera since it's tied to your mouse. Programs though, like Joy to Key, just might be the remedy for the situation, so if you would like to bind the keys, this might be a solid option for you. On the surface, the PC might seem like a decent replication of the console experience, but simple game breaking and incompatibility issues can leave difficulty for most players. But then it calls into question which port of Spider-Man suits your needs. Gear up, webheads. We have a side-by-side comparison to get through.
Pizza time.
There we go, that's what Spider-Man entails, and it's nice to revisit the title. I've had a lot of fond memories playing this as a kid, renting it from Hollywood Video, trying it out, and I really did like it. I know it's not as good as the other Spider-Man games, but while I do feel it's more of the same, it's fun to play, and I really had a nice time. So hopefully this guide gives you a little bit more of a concise look at what Spider-Man is all about, and which version works for you. But what do you guys think? What version of Spider-Man entices your needs? Do you want to play the cumbersome PC version? Or does the Xbox version work? But the PS2 is not too bad either. But let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. And thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you're interested in watching more of what I do, on screen you can see more videos of what I do, and also I wanted to thank the people who supported the channel, as well as Telsrob and a couple of other people. Why did I mention them? Because they joined the Kelpie crew. So if you want to find out how to do that and support the channel, all the links will be down below. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoy the video.